Did you ever have a day where you felt like this?
Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go!
Hey everybody, it's George the Antique Nomad, and as promised, we are back in Paducah with the group from the Meetup for one last video. This is the Shed, and it is a really great vendor mall, and it's a good place to pick as a dealer. There are people who are antique dealers here, there are people who are thrift resellers here, and there's people who just want to get rid of stuff. So it's a good place to go looking, and we will take the camera and show you us all going into the store and get started. Okay, so we're all going into the Shed and bargain hunt, and we've got Jeffrey from Real Nifty Vintage going in the door, Patrick from Trusty Huckster Mercantile, there goes Mary Beth, Laura's next to me from Fatbird Finds, and there's Misty from Thrifter Junker Vintage Hunter. And I am going to put on my mask. We're all going to rob the place, I guess. No, we know why we're doing the masks.
Oh, thank you. It's been so cute. Good to see you. You too. I didn't think that I would see you.
Right when you get in the door, they've got cool stuff right at the get-go. And one of the things I like here is this old coffee grinder. I haven't shown you a coffee grinder before. This is Enterprise out of Philadelphia, Enterprise Manufacturing. They did a lot of these. It's priced at $2.99, and you know, they can go for about that still. A lot of people like these because they grind their espresso beans in them. These were made for stores, general stores around 1900. And look, it's still got the eagle on the ball, and that's important. You've got to have all the pieces to these to get full price. This would have opened up and you put your beans in there, and then you get your grind, and out the bottom in the drawer comes your product. This would have been for a small store, but nowadays this would just be in a house for a big coffee drinker. Okay, this is a cool old piece here. This is motor oil Red Hat gasoline. Red Hat is one of those obscure regional brands that you don't really see anymore, and yet it was a coast-to-coast independent oil associate. So in certain parts of the country you'd have different names, and so that makes that one kind of unusual. It's priced at $65. There's a little bit of damage, but that's a fair price for what it is because it's a more obscure maker. This is neat here. This is a little farm table, and you can tell because it's got the bin at the bottom that's curved, and that would have been where you usually would have kept your flour. That way when you were baking you could just pull it out and you take a scoop of it. That's why it's curved, is so that it'd be easy to scoop it out, and then you could roll it on top here, or you have a pull-out board here. This particular piece looks like something that somebody probably made by hand. Again, a lot of this country furniture was made by people for a particular use. It wasn't necessarily something you went and bought. They're also referred to sometimes as belly cabinet in this part of the country, again because of the round belly at the bottom. And this one's priced at $4.50. There's some neat old mixing bowls here from the early to mid 20th century as well, with the banding. Some of these were made by McCoy, but other companies did this as well in the day. And then they've got some nice quilts back here. I see a wedding ring. I always like when they finish it so that the edge is also a ring. That one's priced at $1.25. They really do price quilts here in Paducah because this is the home of the National Quilt Museum, which in ordinary times has a big convention twice a year, and people come from all over the world to it. The Quilt Museum is really amazing, and when they reopen again, we'll have to go in there and shoot some video. I'll try to put some pictures of some of the things that I saw the last time I was there in here for you quilters, because they just have some really beautiful and amazing modern quilts. And then there's also an antique quilt show that's held simultaneously. Now this is a vendor mall, and in this part of the country we see a lot of vendor malls, and they typically have a wide range of things, new, old, and in between. So you'll see this, which is new, but it looks old, for the Vichy Opera House. And then right around in the same booth you have Unfortunately missing the original top, but this is Hall China's tulip pattern, which is a really great stylized Art Deco floral pattern. Bunch of little arrowhead Melmac dishes. People like the square ones. These were made, I believe, in Los Angeles, if I remember right, and they were by, this is the Brockhart pattern by Arrowhead. Melmac was very popular in the early 50s because lots of people were having kids, and it was advertised as being completely non-breakable. It was hard to break. It's not impossible to break Melmac. And of course, Melmac comes from the planet Melmac, where Alf is from. This large salad bowl is probably by Los Angeles Potteries. Let's see if we can tell. Yes, it is hard to read, but that is the mark for Los Angeles Potteries. They were in business actually longer than a lot of the California pottery companies. This one's hand painted. I would say that dates to about 1970. Most of the California potteries were gone by then. The LA pottery stuff doesn't have as many collectors as I would think it would. It was mainly this type of hand painted table serviceware and some home pottery pieces and planters as well are marked LA Potteries. And it really deserves more of a following than I think it has. I think people just really don't realize that they did a lot of neat stuff that people collect for other reasons, like I like kitchenware. And the price on this is $10.99 minus 30%, so $7. It's a good deal for what it is. It's a little big to ship for an online reseller, but for someone selling at shows like I do, it might be worth getting. This is so strange I might have to buy it. I'm going to look and see how it's made. It's Homer Laughlin, and it's just a little bread plate, but it's got the anchor on it, and that means it should have been made for the US Navy, and yet it also has a clown with a plate that they're juggling as transferware. And that does not look like a decal that was applied after the fact. It appears to be under the glaze. You can tell because of the shiny, or at least it's fired on top of the glaze. Some of the paint, I believe, is under the glaze. So I'm thinking that this might have been some experimental piece that they did just as a sample for something, and they just used a navy plate blank because they had it available. So that's kind of an obscure thing. I think I'm going to get that. This is neat. This is a set that I believe might have been by McCoy. Hull Pottery also made some of this type of stuff early in their production, but I think this is an early McCoy or possibly Monmouth. I'd have to look it up. I used to know a lot of this by heart, but you know, after doing this for a long time, you get so much information in your head, sometimes it's hard to tell what's what. The chips are the only thing that dissuade me on this. Otherwise, I think that'd be a buy. In here, we have a little Wesson Oil crock, and these were given out, I believe, in the 1940s or 50s as an advertising piece. About the time people stopped using crockery, they started finding other reasons to make it, and this would have been a premium. You probably got your Wesson Oil in it back in that day. It's got a few little chips. It's priced at $25. I think for the condition, that's about right. Neat red drop leaf Formica table next to it. And the yellow kitty cookie jar that looks like a 70s or 80s thing. I like this a lot. It's something that somebody created. I'm not sure how they put it together. Obviously the table legs they got somewhere. Well, no, it looks like it's actually a production piece. I haven't seen this before. Horseshoe handles, screws and legs are packed with this. Okay, so you had to screw this together when you got it. Howe Folding Furniture, Park Avenue, New York 16, so that's before 1963 when the zip codes came out. If it folds, ask how. So apparently they made portable furniture. I have not seen this piece before, and I think it's really fun that it is a horseshoe shape. It's priced at $30. I don't know that there's more money in it than that for me. I'm tempted by it though. And then here is what Treasure Craft did in the 70s when the brown started going out of style. They redid all of their cookie jars and canisters in the white colors, so it still has that wood grain look, but it's a lighter color. This is because in the late 70s you see a move towards these lighter ivory colors. It's still got that great painted floral on it. And they also changed to wooden handles because they were a little bit more high quality, and that's only priced at $15. If you're a Treasure Craft collector like I am, that's a pretty good price. Now, Treasure Craft one of their designers was Don Winton when he and his brother Ross closed the Twin Winton factory. Well, these are Twin Winton pieces from the mid-70s. This is the horse salt and pepper, only priced at $6. This is the big range size. And it says Twin Winton, California, USA. It was called Twin Winton because the Wintons were twins. Don and his brother Ross had the pottery, and they did very well with it for a number of years. Don Winton went on to design sculptures for the Smithsonian, for the Israeli government, a huge ibex statue that is, I believe, in either Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. So he was a pretty important designer in the long run. Well, we're going to take a look in this booth here. I like this orange piece of glass in the midst of all this Pyrex, but I think this might be newer, and I'll show you why. The color swirl is interesting, but look at the way the bottom is polished. It's polished where you see a grind and then a very smooth mark where they grind it back in the middle. That's what we see with Polish and Chinese glass that's made recently, and that is a distinguishing characteristic as opposed to vintage glass. So it's perfectly fine to buy it if you like it for the color and the shape, but don't be fooled that it's old, because it isn't. Here is a nativity set in a blow mold, priced at $115. The colors are strong and the baby Jesus is there. For some reason, those get stolen a lot. It seems like a very wrong thing to do. If you're going to steal something, you're going to steal the baby Jesus out of a nativity set? Well, anyhow, it is priced at $115. That's about the right price for what it is. I've just got to show you what Jeffrey has in his cart already. This really is, oh.
Yeah, we're sharing a cart.
It's Misty and Jeffrey together. Wow.
I'm in the front of the cart.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you've got some good stuff. That lamp for $5 minus discount is just crazy cheap price. So cool.
Yeah, Misty has some fun things over here.
Much virtue in herbs, little in men. Well, yeah, I've noticed that too.
So she's gonna.
Oh, do you? Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that
Should
set.
be Nafco-ware, right?
Yeah, I believe it
I
is.
have the cups, some of the cups, but they're in horrible condition, so I'm just going to replace it with them.
Nice.
And these, did you see these?
Oh, those are great. Oh, I haven't seen those in ages. The American Limoges, yeah. Yeah, they did those. They used the Limoges name because they figured it would help sell it, but I mean, it's nothing like Limoges, but they're really neat, and those actually go for good money with the gambling stuff on it.
How much were they?
We have a
They're
viewer.
40% off, $2.
Wow, that's super cheap. And
We love shopping. I want to shop with George every trip.
I know, this is so much fun.
This lamp is $8. It's in kind of rough shape, but I like the shape.
We'll get that, just for giggles.
And there's Patrick from Trusty Hugster Vintage shopping in the half-off booth. This is one of my favorite booths every time I come here. These are old Pepsi plates. They have them priced at half of $25, and they sell for $25 to $30, so it's a good deal. And this is Coney Island, I believe. This would have been done in the early 60s as a promotion for Pepsi. You can tell early 60s because it's got the Pepsi Cola bottle cap logo with one dot, if I can get it to come into focus. Well, you might have to take my word for it. Anyway, it's a neat piece, and they have a couple of them, but I already have one in my stock, so I'm going to leave that for somebody else. This dealer has a couple of old industrial molds, and they're only priced at $17.50 each. People mainly are using these for artwork now. There's an artist in Owensboro, Kentucky, not far from here, who takes these, for example, like this one, he would see a figure with a hat, and then he would turn it into some sort of a robotic-looking figure that was probably holding this stick. If I was that clever, I would buy these because I think they could be repurposed in a whole lot of fun ways. This one, I'm going to turn the camera sideways, could also be made into some sort of a robotic looking figure. Fun stuff. If you're an artist or a repurposer, thrift stores and vendor malls are a great place to go for inspiration and some really cool bases for doing projects. Well, a lot of people are afraid to go here right now, but you know what? I'm going to just show these pieces because this is part of why we're having the conversations we're having now in society. These are all black memorabilia items, and they are sheet music that are framed, and these are real pieces from the 19-teens and 20s primarily, and all of them are pretty much caricatures. These were not the things that were being sold to black people at the time. These were being sold to white people, and they were representations based on how black people had been depicted back in the time of the Civil War. Funnily enough, the movie Gone with the Wind actually set a lot of stereotypes in people's heads based on Civil War lore and legend that have really persisted, and this is part of the reason that we're having these conversations now. So I think it's important to show that these things existed. Most of my collectors for these items are black people. I understand eBay is starting to limit their sale at this point. So it will be interesting to see what the fate of these old pieces is in the marketplace after people are reconsidering the social ramifications of these things. Lightning rods. These are something we see in the Midwest that I love to buy, and I don't see them out west like I do here. And I don't see them in Florida either, even though they have all the lightning in Florida, because most of these were done in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and they don't do them the same way after that point, and most of Florida was developed after that point. So this is really something we see in the Midwest. Now, the most complete ones are going to have some sort of a spinner like this. Oftentimes they would show the direction. This one's missing part of its tail. These are all priced between $95 and $120. That seems to be the going rate at this point. But there's lots of different styles, and there are people who collect them just because it's interesting to see all the different styles that they made. This one you can see is a glass ball that had manganese in it and turned lavender in the sun. Some people collect lavender glass that's sun-turned because they think it's really cool, and it is a neat look. Other people who are serious glass collectors don't like it because it actually is a form of damage. It's where the manganese that they used to use in glass to clarify it before they switched over to soda lime during the First World War because of the manganese being in short supply. And if you left it in the sun, the manganese would eventually turn purple, and that's where the lavender glass comes from. If it didn't have a chip, it'd be a great deal for $10. I'm not going to buy it because it does have a chip here. But this is Shawnee, and this is the Sundial Casserole. And you can see why it's named that. The bottom, it's very hard to read, but it would actually say Kenwood. Kenwood was the Shawnee line in the mid-50s when they got away from the whimsical stuff and started doing more modern. These were the pieces they did, and the Kenwood line was their modernist line. People always ask me what it's like shopping with other antique dealers, and it can be a really good thing because everybody looks for different stuff. They've found some really cool stuff at great prices. However, they all passed this by, probably because it was $22.50, which seems like a lot. But this is Viking glass. It is very hard to find ruby in the tall birds. I have a customer who's been looking for this color in the rooster for 7 years, and we haven't been able to find her one. So even though this is priced at $22.50, I'm going to buy it.
All of it brings up grandma nostalgia or Mimi nostalgia.
Well, I got the Band-Aid tin. I collect those.
Aww.
And the Scotch tape tins. I collect those. So I actually
There was some neat, like first aid
right here.
pamphlets in here.
The red.
Yeah. The Red Cross one. Well, this little pamphlet was neat.
I just remember.
It's from the Travelers Insurance Company.
Oh wow.
So while I'm thinking of it, please comment in the space below here and also hit the thumbs up button to like this video. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button below. Also hit the bell below to be notified of new videos coming every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much for following along. Let's go back to this video.
So we're up in the showcase area, and there's some neat things in some of these showcases. Some vendor malls don't have great showcase dealers, but this one does. I always find some good stuff here. And I see a couple of things in here I think I'd like to take a look at, but I'm going to let another fellow get in here first because I'm talking and I need to let him have a shot at it first. But I see some old tap pulls there. There's the old Westinghouse advertising bank that counts up the money as you drop it in. Someone got all the way to $9. If they got to 10, they could take it in and get it opened. The anti-knock lead sign from the old gas pump is $39. That's about the going rate, $39 to $45 on those. This is Roseville doll rose. That's a pretty good pattern, and at $75, that's a very fair price for what it is. They've got an old Coca-Cola radio from the late 70s in the original box for $20. The prices are really not bad here, but there's a few things that are good enough that I think I can actually buy. And ooh, hypnotic. No skill required. That sounds about like my skill level, so that's perfect. Oh yes, and here in the box, priced at $120, but she's mint in box with all her original stuff, is Skipper, who was Barbie's little sister who wore the junior clothes. Look at this crazy looking gal from the early 70s in the hot psychedelic pink. It says, I'm not sure of her function. Well, her function is to be a pin cushion, but then the bottom here would hold your thimbles and possibly a needle case as well. Some people also use these as lipstick holders on a dresser. In any event, they're made out of paper mache, as I recall, and I think that they're Japanese. The eyes are hand painted. It's half off of $10. I think that's a buy. This is neat. It's a washstand pitcher and bowl, but this would have been towards the end of the production of these because it's a more stylized, almost Art Deco pattern. And the mark on it is Crown Ducal ware. It was one of the Staffordshire potteries in England that made a lot of really nice stuff but doesn't get a lot of credit somehow. But look at the graceful shape of that handle. And this is sort of a transition between Art Nouveau and Art Deco, so this will be a 1920s set. At this point in America, more people were getting indoor plumbing, but in Europe there were still a lot of people who were living in places that shared a continental bath, and so you might have had your own washstand pitcher set in your house so that you didn't have to run down to the shared bathroom all the time. And so they were still producing these there. It's only $25 for the set. These have really gone down in value, and it's a shame in a way because they make great flower vases. The bowls are really good for everything from planters to serving pieces, really, and they're quite colossal. So for the price, they're a really fun thing to collect now if you have the space. Not everybody recognizes these as Roseville Pottery because a lot of people think of Roseville as having matte glazes and not being shiny glossy like this, but this is Roseville's Windcraft line. This was one of the last adaptations they did of the floral pieces that they had made in the 20s and 30s and 40s to great success. By the late 40s, this was going out of style, so they decided to do gloss glazes. You see the Roseville mark. And the gloss glazes did extend the line for probably another 4 or 5 years. Roseville actually lasted until 1954. They came out with a dinnerware pattern called Raymore that was absolutely wonderful, modernist style. It turned out to be very hard to produce, and it was prone to chipping, and it didn't do well in the marketplace. It's very popular and collectible now, but that was basically what put them out of business, that in the 1954 recession. This space is very crowded with guy stuff, especially tins and particularly oil tins. Old oil cans and that sort of thing are collectible now. They've come out of garages and gone into displays like this one. They also have a bunch of old bottles. There's definitely bottle collectors. Now the bottles that are the most valuable typically are early 1900s and the more obscure sodas. These are ones we see fairly often, but you do have the original Mountain Dew guy, the hillbilly shooting at the outhouse. Well, he's shooting at someone running to the outhouse. You see prices in the $3 to $4 range on up on these.
And for what it is, it's probably not that expensive either.
I don't see the price.
What's on the tag on the table?
Oh, $8.99.
Is that for the couch?
2 round table, 2-piece sofa.
Oh,
It's
for all of
$900
it.
for the
for all
entire
of it.
set.
That's a steal.
It really is. If you
He's not marked.
This is such a great example of how there's something for everyone at these stores. This little guy didn't catch anyone else's fancy, but it did mine, the little sombrero wearing guy. He's Japanese, hand painted. Just cute, good color, and he's $4.50, and he's got the Japan mark, so he's a 1950s piece. I think I'm going to take that because I do a lot of Western, and he'll look cute in the middle of a display. Sometimes things just are worth getting because of the look. It doesn't have to necessarily be by somebody or a designer. It's not always about that. Is it a good idea to name your product Harry Carry, especially when it's a vaporizer? Maybe it vaporizes you. That sounds like a terrible product, actually. But it's still here in its original box, probably because the people were afraid to use it with a name like that. It originally cost, wow, $6.95 at Black & Company, and this would have been probably about 1960. Today I don't see a price, so maybe it's free, but I just love that box. I think I might have to get it. Novelty clocks started being a thing in the early 30s especially, and this is one I haven't seen before. It's priced at $100, which I think is full price, especially because the copper finishes got some darkening from corrosion, but it's interesting because it's not something I've run into in the past. It's called Rodeo, and you can see why. United Clock Company. It's very important to see whether these work because these electric motors started to become pretty cheaply made around the Depression time, and so electric clocks are very hard to repair as a result, unlike mechanical clocks. So you'd want to make sure it worked. If you really loved it, $100 would be a fair price. It is an unusual one. This space has an interesting mix of vintage items. The industrial cart here, which they put a tabletop on and rollers, I think that's pretty smart. They're asking $2.95, which is pretty much what I would think would be full price for it, but it's nicely done, and for someone buying it for use, that's actually not a bad deal. People love things with lots of drawers now. Next to it we have, also with a new top on it for $185. What are you? It's an old livestock feeder made in Minnesota called a feederette, and they have converted it into a kitchen island by putting a wooden top on it. Lots of people are doing these sorts of things now. It's pretty clever. And then they have a neat old drawer set here from Gardner Wire Company from Chicago. This one is in its original condition. This would be great for all sorts of things, not just wire and hardware and things it was intended for, but collections of jewelry or marbles or shells, all those little things people like to collect, tape measures, matchbooks, things that need lots of little drawers. So let's see what the price is on this. $90. You know, that's about what I see things like this going for. So it's not for me for resale, but it's neat. Another thing priced at $95 that I thought was fun is this 1970s hanging chandelier with the blue prisms. We don't see colored prisms that much. It's really more of a late 60s, mid 70s thing. It's sort of the next phase of Hollywood Regency at that time. You got to make sure that all the prisms are there though, because these colored ones are hard enough to get that you might not be able to easily replace them like you can a crystal one. Lawson Wood was an artist who's primarily known, especially during the Second World War, for making calendars and blotters and comical things with monkeys on them, mainly to keep people's spirits elevated during the war and also tell them things like, don't tell your secrets to people. Here's his signature. It's stylized. He did a very stylized Art Deco signature back in that time. But this particular piece was done based on a photograph taken at the Carling's Brewery in London, Ontario in the 1880s of a bunch of policemen enjoying Carling's beer out of the old mugs. And Lawson Wood, as a commercial artist, was tasked with making this into an advertising piece. Again, around the 1930s. This one's printed on tin. There's older and somewhat newer versions, but you can tell that this one's old because it's got the old print on the back, the old printed cardboard to look like wood, and this handy note here: to keep this sign clean and bright, wipe the surface at least every 30 days with a damp cloth, because I guess you wouldn't have thought of that on your own. It's priced at $100. I got $95 for the last one I had, so I think the price is about right. It's not something I'll be able to buy today, but for somebody who thinks it's cool, which it is, it's a good deal. And then let's see what market is advertised under here. Okay, that sign is a reproduction, so I guess I don't need to worry about that. Did you ever have a day where you felt like this? This is an old Funhouse Mirror, and it is really fun. I've got 2 heads and 3 and 1 and morphed together in alien form. I just love these things. I had one a few years ago and I sold it to some guy who collects old carnival oddities for $300. I don't know whether this one's even for sale, but I just love playing around with them because you get all this really neat stuff. I hope this visual comes out. I don't know what it'll be like, but I'm having a lot of fun trying. Then on the other side you have the convex mirror, and I'm a tall skinny guy, so it kind of just makes me look like I usually do, but for someone else it'll warp them into all sorts of interesting shapes. These are so much fun.
You know
She's
what?
not paying attention.
She'll jump up in her recliner over there, then she'll start halfway across to me and look at me and say, "Can I come over here?"
What a good
They
girl.
come visit us several
What a
times
good
a
girl.
Yeah.
Aw.
week. At 2 o'clock now, if I don't see my Harry and my Precious, I start to get worried.
Well, Harry, thank you for introducing me to her. Yeah, what a
She's
good
had a
girl.
picture in the paper twice,
Really?
and she's been on Channel 6 News once.
Oh, that's great. Well, she's going to be on YouTube now.
Oh yeah.
They've got some picture discs in here. Billy Idol with the EP Rebel Yell, Eyes Without a Face, The Dead Next Door, and Dancing with Myself. There's also E.T. with his picture disc. Picture discs are pretty collectible now. You see prices $15 to $25. Up on top here you've got Quiet Riot. It was kind of a big thing in the 70s and 80s as a novelty. And they're collectible now as they really were from the very beginning. I hope these are visible because they're interesting. They're old glass slides. This one's advertising the Chris Nee State Bank. This one is advertising a chiropractor. There were a lot of small towns where they were still doing movie slides in the 1930s as advertising. It was something you see generally earlier when they were using the equivalent of a magic lantern picture scope. But this one has a grocery store named A.C. Powell, and then Faye Wickham, the tailor next door north of the theater. These are pretty collectible because they show a lot of businesses that aren't around anymore, and they were really done mainly in small towns. This one, that you will have a Merry Christmas, is the wish of Dr. L.G. Spradley. I think is a particularly interesting one. Well, this is an election year, and I haven't run into these for a long time, so I wanted to show. These are the elephant and donkey razor banks. These were given out by Listerine, and this dealer says it was for the 1932 election. I think they did it in 36 as well. And so you would have the old razors from the safety razors, which were a fairly new idea then, and they needed someplace to put them. So you would put them in here, and then the idea was once you filled it up, you threw them away, and a lot of people did. That's why they're $15 and $20 on some of the old razor banks now. They have several of these priced only at $10 though. I believe the ones in the middle with the man are Clemenson's pottery, and I've sold them for more, so I think I'm going to take a look at some of these up close. Robots for 80s kids are popular collectibles now. This one is Volthog, and you can tell 80s or 90s, probably 80s actually, because it's turbo, and cars started having turbocharged engines in the 80s, so everything became turbo this and turbo that for a while. And then on the right, this one's definitely right around 1980. This guy is the Rad 2.0. Rad, of course, becomes an expression in the late 80s, so we're probably looking at that. It's called the Thorndike, you can see in there. The Thorndike Rad 2.0. And these guys would have been remote controlled. There's a lot of interest in remote controlled toys of all sorts, and particularly robots now, because a lot of people who grew up in the 80s and 90s and played with these as kids are today's collectors. The one on the right's priced at $125. I didn't see a price for the one on the left. I know I have a 2XL that plays tapes by Mego from the late 70s, and it's worth about $125, so that sounds about right. And then you can see there's all sorts of little robot critters down here too, and a lot of these appear to be vintage as well. Don't throw your kids' old toys away. At least call an antique dealer and see if you can get something for them. Then in the back we have the Frigid Robot Fan. That's a hard one to find. I just showed one, funnily enough, in a video from an antique mall in Florida, and they had it priced about $100 more than this one. This one's priced at $75. I haven't been able to find any evidence of these selling, so that might be a good deal. It's hard to say. And then there's these little wind-up guys, the Galaxy here. This is really a fun little collection. I'm not sure why it is that I find so much robot stuff in Kentucky, but that is where I seem to come up with it. This old ship's wheel has a lot going for it as a decorative object because it is real and it's old. There's a lot of reproductions of these from the 60s that you see, but this one you can tell. It was actually meant to be used. It's got rusted metal, It's got big bolts that would have held the hardware, and you can tell it's been used because at the places where you would usually grip it, there's wear. See how the handle is a different color from the oils in people's hands wearing off the finish over the years? And then it's darker there and then lighter here because they would have gripped on opposite sides generally. The only thing for me about this is that it's $400, and to me that is full price. So not something I can buy, but something I can show you that is really cool to see. More signs amongst other things in here, but there's some other things as well that are fun to see, so I'm going to take a look in here with you. One thing I wanted to point out, it's upside down, but this is an old aluminum mailbox. And yes, old, or actually newspaper box. And old newspaper boxes, as well as mailboxes, are collectible because most people aren't getting the newspaper this way anymore. This one's for the Courier Journal. It's made out of aluminum. This one's probably a little newer than some we see, probably 1980s. They have it priced at $49. I would say that that's about where they sell. We've got a 4-H club leader sign, and vintage ones of those sell for $25 to $30. People like old farm signs these days. Anything that's evocative of that. I think as we've moved more into suburban and urban living, and especially with the current circumstances, people are kind of hankering for the way things were, and farm living definitely reflects that. The idea of having open spaces right now is kind of nice. Two signs here. I'm going to tip the camera so you can see them better. Asbestos and non-asbestos. That might have been for brake linings or something, but it definitely was to keep people from getting it into asbestos items without knowing, because by the 1970s there was great awareness that asbestos was a cancer-causing agent. Took a while to figure out what to do about it. It turns out the best thing to do when it's in buildings is nothing, leave it alone and seal it off. But this would have been to protect workers, and the asbestos sign is going to be the more valuable because it's the item that is now controversial. Well, I guess we did all right because all of us have a pile. In fact, there's like 3 shopping carts full, and I've got a stack as well. So we are up at the counter at the shed. It really is fun being with a bunch of thrifters and resellers because we all see different things and we all had fun. It's funny, I'm getting this black Fenton glass, and Jeffrey actually picked it up because he collects black amethyst, but he likes the 20s era pieces. And so then I came along and didn't know that he had looked at it, and I spotted it, and I have a customer who's looking for black in that 1960s. This is a Fenton piece in the thumbnail, so I'm going to get it. So that's what makes the world go round. Everyone likes and notices different things. Well, I sure had a lot of fun with this group of YouTubers. I can't wait to do it again, and I'm really enjoying getting to meet a bunch of you. I've done some shows and had some sales, and it's nice to see the real world of antique and vintage coming back online. And I'm just so excited that the collegial nature of the real world antique and vintage business is proving to carry through to the online world. So it's a lot of fun. I'm so glad to be part of it and to bring it to you. And in the meantime, this is George the Antique Nomad on Periscope, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and here on YouTube on Mondays and Wednesdays. We'll see you again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below. Click the bell to be notified when new videos upload. Leave a comment below and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.